Hello, my name is Vincent Cole Smith, and I've written this, One Rainy Night. One rainy night, many years ago, hidden away in an army of trees and foliage, stood a house. The house was large, with ornate details and limestone pillars. Within the house were a flurry of statues, paintings, and other worldly items. Within the long corridors and large rooms lived a man, Donald Murphy. Donald Murphy was a lonely man, by choice, choosing to be alone instead of going out at night and talking to others. He didn't have a wife, or friends, or family. He was well and truly alone. Donald slumped over his desk, writing paper after paper. One was a notice of dismissal, another was his checking account. Donald was a rich man. How else could he afford his luxuries? The raindrops were his only company. Until 6 loud knocks were heard at the front door. There was someone there. Donald leaned over the table to look out the window and was confronted by a shadow stood at the front door. Another 6 loud knocks were heard. Donald was not used to visitors, never mind at this time of night, but he couldn't help but feel curious of who this person was. As he walked to the front door, the shadow knocked once more. Donald couldn't entirely make out the person through the peephole, so he opened the door. He was greeted by an odd sight. A man. He was stood with his right hand in the air, and his left hand holding a briefcase. The man wore a fedora upon his head, and a stripy brown suit. "Good evening, friend," the man said calmly. "How are you?" Donald was confused. "I'm fine. Why are you outside my house?" The stranger laughed to himself. "I apologise. It seems I've gotten myself stranded. I saw the house and I knew a man like yourself would have exactly what I want. May I come in?" Donald remained very confused. How would anyone get stranded out here? Donald specifically got the house away from people. Something felt a bit dodgy. He looked the man up and down. He looked behind him. There wasn't anyone in the trees ready to jump out at him. Seemed alright. "You want to come in?" Donald asked. The stranger smiled. "Yes, only briefly. Maybe until the storm passes." Donald was skeptical. Again, this man didn't seem like a threat. And if he wasn't, Donald could protect himself. "Okay," he said. "Come in." The stranger's smile widened, showing all his teeth. Wonderful. The stranger followed Donald to a room with a table. 2 seats sat opposite each other, and a statue stood off to the side, observing the goings-on. The room was in a slight state of disarray. Donald cleared the table. "Take a seat. I'll make you a drink." The stranger perked up. "I'll have wine." Donald didn't like being ordered about, but he did it anyway. He sat across from the stranger, both glasses of wine. The stranger perked up once more. "I used to know a man who made wine," he said. "Sadly, he's up with the angels now." Donald didn't really care, to be honest. Just said okay. The stranger looked up at Donald. "Anyhow, I feel like we should do something to pass the time. It'll make my leave seem much, much sooner." Donald looked up into the stranger's eyes. "I guess we can. What did you have in mind?" The stranger snickered before putting a briefcase on the table. He opened it and pulled out a black and white checkered board on the table. "I'm sure you know how to play chess." Donald scoffed. "Of course I do. What do you take me for?" The stranger smiled. "Good. Do you want to be black or white?" Donald didn't speak. He just set up the whites on his end. The two played silently against each other for a few minutes. Donald played very aggressively, sacrificing each of his pieces in service of the king. "I see you like playing the Dutch defence," the stranger said. "Traditionally, it is played by the person who plays as black, but I'll turn a blind eye." Donald nodded. "I guess it's the best way to go through life." The stranger looked up at him once more. "Do you use it anywhere else?" Donald shrugged, trying to hide his smoke. "I quite like using it in my place of work." The stranger perked up for a third time. You own a business? The stranger asked. Donald nodded. Yes, I own a few. An AI startup, a crypto company, and an arms manufacturer. The stranger was impressed. You seem to be doing quite well for yourself. Donald nodded with bitter pride. Yes, I do. The stranger's smile widened as he thought of an idea. Well, if a man of your caliber and honour was to be so pleased, why don't we put some stakes in our game? Donald raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? The stranger's grin fixed. Why don't we make a little wager? Donald looked up. He quite enjoyed the little gambling. He looked at the chessboard. He was doing quite well. He could easily win. How about, Donald said, if I win, you leave my house? The stranger nodded in agreement. And if I win, you give me your most valuable asset. Donald scoffed. I'm not giving you my house. Donald watched as the stranger thought to himself for a few moments. How about you give me the most valuable asset in this room? Donald turned to a statue, the one that was looking over the game. Guess you're getting a bit dusty these days. You have a deal. With that, the two shook hands. The stranger looked at the statue. Why is she so dusty? I'm sure a man of your caliber has some kind of housemaid. Donald grumbled to himself. I did. I'm in the midst of getting a new one. The stranger tilted his head. Now, what happened? Donald gave a look of disdain. She didn't know her place. She was always slacking off. She complained about her wages and her trek here every day. I kept her alive, and she couldn't even be grateful for that. A few weeks ago, she made my coffee wrong. It was far too bitter. I was done after that. The stranger smiled at Donald's anger. What was her name? Carissa Mahar. Donald spat. The stranger laughed. Carissa Mahar, of course, who else could it be? Donald raised his eyebrow again. Did you know her? The stranger laughed more. I was acquainted with her fairly recently. She was a sweet girl. All her family unfortunately turned their backs on her when she started looking for a wife. She had 3 jobs before working for you, each a little worse than the last. I guess you could say she enjoyed hanging around here as much as she liked hanging from her neck. Donald froze. Donald locked eyes with the stranger, snarling at his smug expression. What do you mean? The stranger laughed. Yes, she was found in her house in that state just last night. Pity, really. Donald was shocked by his tone. Is that why you're here? He said with gravelly anger. To make me feel wrong for firing her. It's not my fault she died. The stranger licked his lips. The first stage of grief is always denial. Donald stood up with anger. You know what? He barked, moving to the door. This game is over. But when he tried to open the door, it didn't budge. The door was locked. I want it open, Donald said to himself. Because we haven't finished our game, the stranger said. Donald looked back at the stranger. Something started to feel off about him. He hadn't stopped smiling since they had met. How did you know about Carissa? Donald asked. Who are you? The stranger's eyes widened. I'm the man they call when someone dies. Donald shook his head. No. Who are you really? The stranger paused for a moment while thinking of an explanation. Have you ever heard of the song Walk the Line by Johnny Cash? Donald was confused. What of it? Well, you know how it goes. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep my ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine. I walk the line. Donald was further confused. What's your point? The stranger looked at the chessboard before him. My point is that I've been observing you, keeping a close watch on the things you do. When I heard of a man that steals the water from the earth to cool his infernal machines, I thought of all people dying of thirst. When I heard of a man that sells fake currency to impress men as evil as himself, I thought of all the good that money could do. When I heard of a man who creates weapons of destruction, I thought of all the people who fall victim to it. When I heard of a man who got bitter coffee, I thought of how much Carissa suffered. Over my many years, I never thought I would meet anyone as evil as myself. That's why I came up here. Donald felt guilty after hearing all the things he'd done. Then he realised. He came up here? The stranger gave an evil grin. What do you think? Suddenly everything was making sense. The man they call when someone dies. The way he stood in the doorway. He knew someone who made wine. He somehow got the door locked. He found his house in the middle of nowhere. He came up from somewhere. He knocked at the door 6 times, on 3 separate occasions. 6, 6, 6. Just then, the stranger stamped his foot on the ground. But instead of a loud thud, it was a loud click, like a goat. "Was that you?" Donald asked. The stranger stared at Donald. "Check." Donald did what he was told and looked under the table. He was horrified by what he saw. 2 goat legs. This man wasn't human. This man was a creature out of myth. Donald sat up and was further horrified by what he saw. A monster out of myth. A sick creature with grossly inhuman features. Donald jumped from his chair and held it in front of him as some kind of protection. But as quickly as the stranger became a monster, the monster turned back into a stranger. Donald stood there as the stranger laughed at him. Oh, Donald. Check. Donald hadn't realised that the man had put him in check. "You're so ignorant that you didn't even realise you were in check," the stranger said. Donald sat back down across from the stranger. He didn't know what to think. He looked at the chess match before him. Each move would be a loss. He looked at the stranger. "You're here for my most valuable asset," Donald said. "Clearly you don't think that's my statue." The stranger smiled. "I'm here for your soul, your most valuable asset." "Why did you do all this then?" Donald asked. "If you wanted my soul, you could have just snatched it away from me. Why do this stupid game?" The stranger was taken aback by the question, and after a moment he explained himself. "I have existed since the beginning of existence. I've witnessed villain after villain, but none of them were as good as me. Until I saw you. You didn't come from a poor upbringing. You weren't rejected from anything. You weren't trying to make a difference. You did everything because you wanted to. And I respected that. I saw you as equally villainous as myself. So I wanted to give you a chance. Clearly you've squandered it. So I ask you come willingly. For your own sake." Donald reflected on all his life choices. "Is there any way I can redeem myself?" The stranger glared at Donald. "What do you think?" Donald couldn't move any piece without losing the game. He could prolong the inevitable, but there was no way of escaping this man. He thought about his life, his accomplishments, his regrets. Yes, he was a wealthy man, but that didn't mean anything. He had no marriage, no friends, no true companionship. If only he had seen a way to escape this now inevitable fate. But then he saw it. The stranger was right. They were equal, equally evil, but equally ignorant. It was the way to get out of check. He moved the king in one way that won the game. He won. "I did it!" Donald said with joy. "I did it!" The stranger had stopped smiling now. He had a face of pure rage. "You did it." The stranger knew he had to uphold his end of the deal, so he stood up. "You got lucky. This time, we will meet again, Donald Murphy. Donald looked up at the stranger. I don't think we will. The stranger begrudgingly walked to the door. Good night, sir. The stranger left Donald in silence for a few moments. Donald had narrowly escaped death. He knew he had to be better. We don't know what happened to Donald. We don't know if he improved his life. We don't know what happened to his companies. But we do know one day, one sunny day, he started a new business. The Mahar Charity Foundation.